Hello, this is Dr. Clarence R. Pearson, Sr., and welcome to My View, a podcast where I offer my professional perspective on today's most pressing geopolitical and socioeconomic issues. Recently, my attention has been drawn to developments in Liberia, where the House of Representatives' decision to have expelled Montserrado County District 10 Representative Yeke Kolubah continues to fall short of critical standards politically and constitutionally. Here is my view on the matter. Liberia's Kolubah crisis and the dangerous normalization of constitutional shortcuts. There are moments in a nation's life when a single act, small in appearance but profound in implication, tests whether the rule of law still governs public power. Liberia now stands in such a moment. The expulsion of Representative Yeke Kolubah from the House of Representatives was presented as a constitutional exercise of legislative authority. Article 38 of the 1986 Constitution is clear. A lawmaker may be expelled only with the concurrence of two-thirds of the entire membership. In a 73-member House, that number is not symbolic, it is precise 49. But what happens when one of those 49 says, publicly and unequivocally, I did not sign? That is exactly what Representative Sam P. Jala has done. In a widely circulated video statement, Representative Jala denied signing the resolution used to justify Kolubah's expulsion and demanded to know who appended his name. This is not a minor procedural objection. It is a constitutional alarm bell. Because if one signature used to meet the constitutional threshold is invalid, then the entire foundation of the expulsion collapses. The arithmetic of legitimacy. Constitutions are not suggestions. They are systems of restraint. Article 38 does not say a strong majority. It does not say close enough. It demands two-thirds, 49 out of 73, because expulsion is among the most severe actions a legislature can take against one of its own. If the House counted Representative Jala among those 49, and he now says his signature was never given, then the number is no longer settled fact. It is disputed evidence. And in constitutional law, disputed evidence cannot sustain irreversible decisions. Worse still, Representative Jala may not be alone. Reports indicate that other lawmakers have distanced themselves from the resolution, raising the possibility that the House did not merely miscount, but may have relied on signatures that were never validly obtained. If that is true, then what occurred was not simply a controversial vote, it was a constitutional failure. A legislature above the law, the crisis deepens further. The House reportedly proceeded with the expulsion despite a stay order from the Supreme Court of Liberia, an explicit judicial directive to halt all related actions pending review. If accurate, this is not procedural oversight. It is institutional defiance. In any constitutional democracy, the separation of powers is not a slogan. It is a discipline. The legislature writes the law, the judiciary interprets it. Neither may ignore the other without consequence. When lawmakers act in defiance of a court order, they do not merely violate procedure, they weaken the very architecture that protects democratic governance. And when such actions go unchecked, impunity is no longer accidental, it becomes policy. Due process is not optional. There is another equally troubling dimension to this case: due process. Article 38 itself imposes a condition that is often overlooked but constitutionally binding. All legislative rules must conform to the requirements of due process of law. This is not decorative language. It is a command. Yet available accounts suggest that Representative Kolubah's legal team was denied full opportunity to examine evidence, challenge accusations, and mount a complete defense. If so, the process falls short of the constitutional standard already affirmed by Liberia's Supreme Court, that no person shall suffer penalty without a fair hearing. Even if Kolubah's statements were controversial, even reckless, the Constitution does not permit punishment without procedure. In fact, the more politically charged the accusation, the greater the obligation to ensure fairness. The danger of normalizing violations. This is where the danger becomes national, not personal. What is at stake is not merely the fate of one lawmaker, it is whether Liberia will normalize constitutional shortcuts. Because today, it is one disputed signature. Tomorrow, it may be a disputed election. Today, it is one ignored court order. Tomorrow, it may be an ignored constitution. History shows that democracies rarely collapse overnight. They erode gradually when violations are rationalized, when institutions stretch their authority just a little further each time, and when citizens are told that expediency justifies exception. What we are witnessing is not just a legal controversy, it is a test of whether Liberia's constitutional guardrails still hold. The Supreme Court's moment. The burden now shifts to the Supreme Court. The court must do more than interpret Article 38. It must defend it. That requires a clear and uncompromising inquiry. Were 49 valid, authenticated signatures obtained? Were any signatures forged, misrepresented, or withdrawn? Was due process afforded to the accused? Did the House act in defiance of a judicial stay? If the answer to any of these questions undermines constitutional compliance, then the expulsion cannot stand. Not because of politics, but because of law. A nation at a crossroads, Liberia, has endured conflict, reconstruction, and democratic renewal. Its constitution remains the most important safeguard against a return to instability, but a constitution is only as strong as the willingness to obey it, especially when it is inconvenient. Represher Sam Jala's denial has transformed this episode from a political dispute into a constitutional reckoning. It has exposed a question that Liberia must now answer with clarity and courage. Will the rule of law prevail over the rule of numbers, especially when those numbers themselves are in doubt? If the answer is yes, then this moment will strengthen Liberia's democracy. If the answer is no, then the precedent will outlive this case and weaken every institution that depends on constitutional fidelity. Because in the end, a nation is not governed by how loudly decisions are announced, but by how faithfully its laws are followed. And sometimes all it takes to reveal the truth is one signature that was never signed. My View is a continuing series where I share informed commentary on a wide range of geopolitical and socioeconomic topics. If you found today's discussion helpful, please follow, subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I invite you to explore other My View episodes available online. Until we meet again, goodbye.